So let's talk about that next step, because the ayahuasca brought you into some stage of, spiritual growth, enlightenment, things like that. But it wasn't everything. What was the next chapter after that?
Yes. And I'll say, based on what you just said, there's a very important line, which is treat the person, not the symptoms,
Yes.
right? And that's a totally different world to many doctors and how they operate. And so the shamans were treating me.
Mhm.
They weren't holding me to my symptoms and all of my chaos. They saw right through it all, and they saw me. So what was next was basically a journey where I started to learn through different doctors and teachers and books about the next level of detox, and I got heavy metal tested, and my heavy
Mhm.
metals were off the charts. And that is when I started to understand, wow, heavy metals can really make a person sick. I couldn't fathom that. Even living in the Amazon, I couldn't fathom it. I thought, I'm fasting, I'm juicing. This has to get rid of all of the bad stuff. There's no way any other toxins could be affecting me, right? And and then I learned about mercury and how sinister that is, and how what it does to the myelin sheath and the brain, and it fries you. And when I started, and then I started learning about a leaky gut. And when you have chronic heavy metal poisoning, you almost always have leaky gut. And if you just address the heavy metals, you're going to be in for an even further world of hurt. So that's when I started healing my gut, doing parasite cleanses, doing heavy metal chelation. And this was over a 8 month period of time that I was recovering after 3.5 years of ayahuasca, fasting, yoga, meditation, mantras, all of the other stuff that I was doing. And, there's further levels and layers to it. I mean, there was a lot of spiritual, emotional stuff that I had to clear. There are, noxious energies that come along when you have sickness that, hang around you. There's bad substances, there's heavy metals, there's also noxious energies, as above, so below. And I had to learn how to clear these things that were I mean, really, the best word is haunting, right? I was haunted by certain multi-generational curses and energies, and so I had to clear that. And that's a whole other body of work that we talk about. But on a physical side, purely physical, the heavy metal chelation, the parasite detox, the binder protocols change. I mean, I was resurrected from the dead because I was non-functional, throwing up on a daily basis, fainting on a daily basis, had lost 30 plus 25, 30 pounds, unable to function on a minute to minute basis. Like on my other window here, I have homes that I'm looking at in Brentwood. I couldn't even like open up a window and like open up a Zillow app to look at a home. I would go into a panic attack, right? That's the level of, I couldn't even fill out the forms on one of my practitioners who I worked with many years ago. I couldn't even fill out the forms. I had to have a friend on a phone call saying, okay, Josh, put your name now. Now you put your name. Now you put your birthday. And then I would cry, and I would cry, I can't do it. Like, Josh, you got this. Calm down. And he would coach me through a 1 page document, right? And I was a jiu-jitsu world champion. I worked at Microsoft. I was a very smart person. Like, I mean, now I'm running a big like a big company. That's the level of fracturing that I was in, had endured, right? It was, I mean, I forget, I forget what it was like because I'm a different person now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. Like brain fog is one of those misunderstood. And you can't really, even your description of everything, no one can actually empathize with it in a sense because it's very hard. And I've spoken to people, really bright people such as yourself, that have had that same thing, whether it was mold, Lyme disease, mercury, there's different ways, right? But that ability, someone was telling me they were sitting there looking at what was their shoes and they didn't know what to do with them.
Mhm.
I don't like, do I put them,
Yeah.
like, do I wear them on my head? Like the brain
Yeah.
couldn't work properly. And this is a very smart person. So it's wild. And I feel like so many on a much more nuanced basis are impacted by this, right? It's just the general fatigue, forgetfulness, sort of, you feel a little foggy at times.
Yes.
And so much of that goes back to toxicity. Now, heavy metal toxicities is a bitch. It's like, it's tough because you say it, like when they get in there, it's usually neurological. They go into the tissue. It's difficult to remove.
Yeah.
You bring up binders, and there's a lot of different thoughts on this by so many experts on what to do, whether it's EDTA heavily, or first you have to boost the organs of elimination so that you could get it out, because a lot of times we know if you do heavy chelation, your organs aren't ready. That could just push it into your system and drop it back in your brain where it wasn't before. It was maybe in connective tissue giving you some arthritic pain or joint pain, but now you boosted it into the brain because it couldn't get out of the body, and that screwed you even more. So it's like when I hear people say, "Oh, just do chelation," I don't think it's that simple of an answer. But what are your thoughts on binders and how to truly get rid of heavy metals from the body?
Yeah, I like that you said that. So one of the first people I went to was an acupuncturist who wasn't that well versed in heavy metal chelation, and he gave me cilantro tinctures as the first measure. That was my first thing. That annihilated me, right? So it's very counterintuitive. You would think someone has heavy metals. If we get rid of them, they'll get better. But when you have heavy metals, there's a whole cascade of negative symptoms that come as an after effect that you have to treat first before you get the heavy metals out of the cells. And that's leaky gut. That's the degradation of the nerves. That's all these other things, malnourishment, right? Acidic environment in general because of the heavy metals, right? So basically, what I started doing, and I learned this from a couple different teachers, is that first thing I did is I took a mast cell stabilizer to heal my gut. And then I was able to tolerate a lot more supplements because even if you take someone severely ill, you would think, okay, chlorella, wheatgrass, spirulina, these are all very good things, but they destroy people who are very sensitive, who have mast cell issues, who have leaky gut. So you first worry about healing the leaky gut, calming down the mast cells. Then we introduce things called binders, which basically, the long and short of binders, there's a lot of different binders. Some are synthesized, some are, found in nature, but they will grab onto toxins and help you eliminate them without going into the cell. So a lot of the binders are going to clean the low-hanging fruit, the heavy metals and the toxins that are floating around in the gut, sometimes floating around in the blood. And this will not cause the same type of negative reaction as a chelator. So you get the person healthier, more centered, more clear, and their nervous system calmer through the use of binders like clays, zeolites, enteros gel, pectins. One of my favorites is True Carbon Cleanse from Warren Phillips, who's a really good friend. You should get him on your show too. There's a bunch of different other binders we use, microsilica and there's chitosans and stuff like that. So anyway, once someone takes binders, they are usually in a much better place of health some months later. And then you can start taking them through a chelation journey. So binders are crucial. I've had hundreds of people go from suicidal, can't function, near death, severe depression, panic attacks every day, from just gut healing and binders to go to completely normal functioning humans again. Now they're not in their A game because binders are only one step of the puzzle, but the fire gets put out.
Yeah. And that's what's most important. You have to prioritize addressing root causes, and it has to go with the ones that are obviously the most toxic for you and causing the most, and then going from there into the other layers of that onion that you're peeling back.